everybody. Welcome back to the NESGameMaker. So last time we put together a new enemy, bot, and we also set up our characters, or I should say our enemies, damage states so that they could take damage and die. So now that we've done that, we can start adding in some more enemies. So let's get cracking on that. Let's go over here to my enemy list and see who we got left. We have dealer and moblins and so on and so forth. So let's do the moblin first because the moblin is really easy. He's basically just like with the bit and bot here. I just duplicate this and object enemy. We're going to call you now moblin. Open you up. Go to sprites, enemies, moblin. Sprite enemy moblin move. So we'll use that glow guy. And let's pop open our code here. And well, it's still the same code, but we're going to have to make the same changes to this code that we made when we were changing from bit to bot. So we're going to have to change the name of all of our states from bit or bot into moblin. And let's make sure all this stuff is good. So the moblin, unlike the bit and bot, does not stop moving when it takes damage. So we're going to exit this little bit. And actually, as far as it goes, he only has like 1 HP anyway, so he dies at 1 hit. So it doesn't really matter. So HP minus equals damage, iframes equals true. So you don't really need him very much. Iframe length, iframe damage flashing. So I might as well do this here anywhere. So yeah, instead of doing an HP check, we just kill the moblin directly. Let's update this to moblin state. And he does not have an idle state. He just has move and dead. So we'll do that. Because the moblin is always moving. Instance underscore create underscore layer x y minus 16 object item dropping death explosion. We'll have to get around to actually making that eventually. Is to create object item dropping death explosion. Oh yeah, so he creates 2 of these things, and one is at his feet and one is at his head, so they're like one on top of each other. And in all reality, it shouldn't be an item dropping death explosion. It needs to actually be a regular death explosion. There's 2 different versions of this explosion. One will give it the item drop, the other one will just cause an explosion effect. So, and instance destroy my spear. So what is my spear? Well, the moblin has this little spear that he moves back and forth, right? Well, we're going to create a copy of that spear, which actually moves along with the enemy, because we are going to use that to determine hit. And part of the reason why we're doing it that way is because we want to have a separate hitbox from the actual moblin itself for the spear, because Link's shield can actually deflect damage from the spear. So we want to make sure that the shield is able to properly detect that the spear is a different hitbox from the actual moblin itself, because you will take damage if you touch the moblin as well. So basically, we need 2 different hitbox here for the moblin. And we're going to create a spear object, which will act as the second hitbox. All right, beyond that, everything else is the same as far. So let's come down here to animation. 0. Image speed is 0. Image X scale. At this point, I realized, I don't have to have the image X scale in there anymore, so I can just delete it. Animation speed is 1. Dirt 8 right. 1 facing right. And he doesn't have an idle state, so we're going to change these to move, and these here from bit to moblin. Iframes false, floor sec 0.25, because he will die after 25 seconds of flashing, or a quarter of a second of flashing, I should say. Let's see, 12 is the flashing speed. False for manual sprite change. Frames in state 0. Sprite palette moblin. Let's see, we don't need the state switch timer, so we're just going to do sprite palette moblin. Make sure we keep a palette index. And we are going to have another variable here called distance to player. So what is distance to player? We use that to determine whether or not Moblin should be active or not. Because if he gets far enough away from the player, he stops doing anything. But yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. So HP should be 1, damage should be 4, and the amount of experience given is 0. And we're going to create a new variable called my underscore spear underscore dot damage underscore is equal to damage. And I need to set up my spear. So create this here under animations, my spear instance create effect, Moblin held spear. And come over here to our enemies and create a new object. Object underscore moblin underscore held underscore spear, which will be separate from, per se, the moblin thrown spear, because they can be thrown as well. Because that'll be for the moblin enemy, who is very similar to the moblin, except he just throws spears at you instead of trying to charge you. So over here underneath our enemies, I believe, Moblin spear projectile, and we'll get back to that in a bit. There we go, good to go. All right, let's go into our variables. For the ground acceleration and ground friction and stuff, ground friction is 0.05, gravity is 0.2. As for air friction, we pretty much ignore that existing because we don't have a jump state. And as far as I know, the Moblin himself is never actually put in such a position where he can fall off a ledge or something. So we don't know. I don't, at least in my testing, I don't know if he actually can fall. So, you know, he's only just moving in one straight line in all the areas I was testing in. So ground excel and air excel don't need the air excel, but the ground excel needs to be 0.05. He's somewhat slower than the actual player. There's no, I don't know the exact numbers, but I just made it slightly slower. We don't need walk speed slow or walk speed fast. And since he's always moving at pretty much the same speed, I just set walk speed equal to 1 rather than bothering with any acceleration work inside the game. So that just makes it easier, right? And we can ignore airspeed and fall speed for the moment. And we don't do any wall collision testing with this guy, again, as far as I know. He just moves regardless. Now we need to change our states for our sprite lookup table. Make sure we put in our moblin states, enemy moblin move, and we're pretty much done with that part. So let's move on to the step event. So as I was talking about earlier, in the with the Moblin, he constantly checks for the distance to the player. Why is that? Because when if the instance object link side scrolling exists, then distance to player is equal to distance to object link side scrolling. Otherwise, image speed is equal to 0 and exit. So when link no longer exists, just freeze me in place. But if link does exist, get a distance to link. And then if I am greater than 384 pixels away from link, despawn my spear and despawn me. And make sure you put that exit in there because apparently when you destroy your object, if you don't exit afterwards, it will continue to execute the step event all the way until the step event is through. So who knows? I would think that if you destroy yourself, you would, you'd be done for, but apparently not. Oh yeah, this is basically just despawn the enemy once he gets far enough away. Ground checking should all be the same. And damage check. We don't actually have a damage check because, as I mentioned, when he takes damage, he dies. He does. There's no way to do less than one damage in the game, and he only has 1 HP. So as soon as he takes damage, he's done for. He disappears. He's dead. And let's see what else do we have next. Oh yeah, so timers right here. And actually, we do have a damage check. Uh, let's see, damage check. Okay, the reason for this. Okay, we're going to move our timers from the usual end of the state to right here. The reason for this is because, well, we want him to appear to stop for a couple of frames after taking damage, and then disappear once he's done flashing a little bit. And then we do our state execution at this point as normal. Going into our draw event, just to check and make sure. Yeah, it is the same. And as for our states, we don't have an idle state, so what we're going to do over here is take our move state and copy it over here over our idle state, and our dead state over our move state, then delete that state. And of course, we don't really switch to any other states with him, so we can actually pretty much ignore the state movement part. Oops. So you can just ignore that for the most part. He doesn't really accelerate, but we're going to apply gravity to him just in case he falls off a ledge or something. And as for speed fractions, well, I don't really need X speed fractions, so I just kind of ignored all that in here and only had the Y stuff. And that's just to reduce the amount of calculations running. And as for collisions, I don't care about X speed previous and Y speed previous. You can just leave them there if you feel like it, or you could delete it. It doesn't really make a difference. As I said, those are just heuristic sort of stuff I was putting in case I needed them. Everything else is inside of the animation state, so we're going to actually do some animation stuff with this real quick. But the dead state is still the same, so we can ignore that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to set the image speed of the Moblin to animation speed, and the image X scale should be equal to whatever direction the moblin is currently facing. And what direction they're facing is determined by where Link is and where they're spawned. So they're spawned on the left side of the map, then they'll be facing right as they move to the right. If they're spawned on the right side of the map, they'll be facing left. It's fairly simple at that point. We'll get to that point when we make actual spawners for these guys. So we're going to be moving the spear here. If not instance exists my spear, then for some reason my spear disappeared, destroyed me. That seemed to be kind of weird. I should definitely never have this actually happen, but if it does, yeah, there we go. If my image index is less than 2, then if I am facing to the right, give me a 1, or if I'm facing to the left, give me a -1. And then my spear.x is equal to x plus 25 times underscore dir, and y is y minus 20. So basically we're saying, okay, well, position the spear up here, and the x is plus 25. So I mean, during the first 2 frames, frame 0 and frame 1, thrust my spear out. Otherwise, move it backwards to on frame 2 and frame 3. And yeah, so there we go. That's what I was looking for. So during the frame 0, frame 1, so you can see right there, first 2 frames, he's thrust out. Second 2 frames, the spear comes back. And we want to make sure that it imitates that positioning, our mock spear projectile. And same thing here, except now we're only at 13x because we pulled the spear back. My spear.mask index is equal to right moblin spear projectile. Why did I do that? I don't remember exactly. I said something about regenerating the spear each frame, but I don't know why. Huh. Anyways, maybe we'll figure it out as we go along. My spear.imageXscale is equal to imageXscale. So basically saying, okay, flip me back and forth depending on how the moblin is facing. Right? Sounds good. All right, that should be everything the moblin needs to work properly, I believe. Well, let's actually go into the spear and edit the spear to make sure that it has everything that it needs. Okay, we just need one event in here. So outside room, whenever we go outside the room, clean this up because basically I'm saying, well, do I even really need that at that point? So we do have this going on, right? So once the moblin has walked outside of the room, which is basically what this is right here, when the moblin has walked outside of the room, in other words, gone 384 pixels away from the player, then the moblin destroys itself, right? And by destroying itself, it also destroys the spear. And but if we just let the spear exist, it doesn't really matter, I guess. You probably don't even need this code here then as well, so that's just superfluous at this point. But we're actually going to give it a new parent here. This is the actual important part. Parent enemy projectile. Because we're going to treat this as a projectile, even though it is. Okay. So that's why we were regenerating the spear, I believe. As we need every single frame that it's running around. The nope, I guess I don't know exactly why. Never mind again. But anyways, so we're gonna move on from that point because all I know is that when I put this in there, I fixed something, and I can't remember exactly what. And I bet that if I remove it, I'll again see what the problem is that this fixed. But no, it just confuses me now because I can't remember what the problem was that it fixed. So, anyways, let's see what we're at. We're currently at 20 minutes. Okay, that's good. Uh, let's come in here and do a quick test, and then we'll close up this episode. Oh, if I'm going to do a test, I actually have to have an enemy, right? That's kind of important, right? Uh, da, 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 da. There, properties. There we go. Delete you, and actually, I'm going to put enemies right here. Oops. Let's see, I need to change the grid to 8x8. There we go. Now the enemy can move in the right place. You barely even see him right there due to that red background. Yeah, we'll put him right there. So, no, if we put him right there, we'll pretty much instantly get him. We don't want that. Okay, you're right there. And everything's going good. Link shouldn't take damage from the projectile at this point because, well, he hasn't actually been set up to take enemy. State switch timer. We don't need that. What timers do we need? We need the iframes timer. That's what I was confused there because I thought, well, there's 2 lines of code, so that's how it works, right? But I was wrong. And there he goes. If I touch him, yeah, I take damage because, well, I touched him. But I wouldn't actually take any damage from the spear at this point because we haven't turned on Link's damage from projectiles yet. Because in order to do that, we have to set up Link being able to deflect projectiles. So take a look at him. Object Link side scrolling. How much will it take to set up projectiles? Yeah, projectiles are kind of complicated because there's a bunch of state stuff going on about whether or not you can actually take a projectile hit when you're in certain states and stuff because of deflection at that point. And then you have to choose, okay, well, if he's ducked and you get hit in this position, then he can take damage, etc. So we'll get into that next time. We'll first set up projectiles, and then we'll also look into setting up the Moblin enemy, which is basically a moblin that throws spears at you. So thank you everybody for joining me, and let pass me take it away with some Patreon names. I'd like to thank my legacy Patreon supporters for their support during the NESGameMaker postseason hiatus. James Burton, JD Lowe, Suli, and Bezia. I'd of course also like to thank my current NES GameMaker Patreons for their support during the current NES GameMaker season. Kenneth Klein, Vladimir, Jamal, Fernando, Sergez, and Daniel. Your support helps make the NES GameMaker happen and helps support future projects from me. So until next time, remember to have good luck with your coding.